name is David Cronenberg. I'm a director of my new movie called A Dangerous Method, which is about the relationship between Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, the fathers of modern psychoanalysis, and Sabina Spielrein, a woman who was a patient of Jung's who became a psychoanalyst herself, and somebody who is not really very well known. I hadn't heard of Sabina Spielrein until I read Christopher Hampton's play, and then when I realized, and then I started to get interested in that structure that he had in his play, that sort of what I call an intellectual ménage à trois between her and Freud and Jung. And I started to do some reading about her, and started with the book A Most Dangerous Method, which is one of the sources for his play, and became really quite drawn into the whole, the whole era, the ethos of the era. Well, Sabina was she was a Russian Jewish teenager. She was 18 when she came to the Bergholzli Clinic in Zurich. She was suffering from what they called hysteria, which was a disease that we don't talk about now as hysteria, although we use the word hysterical, but in a different way. Then it was a clinical term, and she was brought to the Bergholzli and put under the care of Carl Jung as a last resort, because they felt that she was totally dysfunctional and really a destroyed woman. Well, it's evident ultimately from the letters of hers that were discovered in 1977 at the University of Geneva, that she was very influential in terms of Freud's thinking and Jung's thinking. For Freud, the idea of sex and death, the idea that there's a letting go of ego in sex that is equivalent to death. It's a disintegration. It's a disappearance. That is one of the reasons that sex is though it's pleasurable, is also somehow threatening to some people, and so the connection between sex and death was something that I think she forced Freud to focus on, and he absorbed it and made it a huge part of his thinking. I do feel closer to Freud, and I think I have to, in my analysis of it, after the fact in a way, it's because Freud really insisted on the reality of the human body. I mean, he and the family relationship and so on. He really felt that the key to neuroses, which is what psychoanalysis was addressing. And Jung, I think, eventually did what Freud feared he would do, which is, I interpret that as the flight from the body. In other words, he started to talk about spiritual self-realization and about God and about his collective unconscious and his archetypes and so on. All of these things were way out there. They were not here. They were not part of Freud's understanding of what the human condition. I mean, I was interested in all genres as a kid, artistically. I mean, as a kid, I would, in terms of movies, I would see cowboy movies and what we called sword fight movies, pirate movies and things like that. And I had no idea what I would write when I started to write my first script. And it turned out to be Shivers, which was definitely a horror film with a bit of sci-fi in it. And I have no idea why that was the case. Other than, I mean, in retrospect, I say, well, philosophically, my understanding of human existence is that it is the human body. The body is the first fact of human existence. The relationship of an artist to his art is very complex and is not very well understood, and a lot of people think it's one-to-one. If you make romantic comedies, then you were a romantic, funny guy. We know that's not the case. For me, what you do as an artist is you dive as deeply into the human condition as you can, what it is to be human. Sometimes you feel like dealing with the most difficult, basic substance of human existence, and to me that's what I'm doing. Well, certainly Freud was attracted to Jung because he wasn't Jewish. It's a simple, on one level it's simple, and he explained it in the movie, and he certainly did in real life as well. He said, I need Jung because we can easily be dismissed, we here in Vienna, because we're all Jews, and it's very easily, Jews are at least second and maybe third-class citizens in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We're not allowed to be in the military, we're not allowed to be in the government, so Jews who have developed this new science of psychoanalysis, it could be dismissed just as some Jewish thing, you know, mystic thing, some not very important kind of movement. However, if we can get a really good Swiss German Christian like Carl Jung, very handsome, very charismatic, but primarily not Jewish, then that will help to legitimize our movement. To a school called Harvard Collegiate, which was about 90% Jewish, it actually shut down during the Jewish holidays. And I learned about Jewishness mostly from my friends there, who would tell me about the terrible things that the rabbis did when they went to what we call Jewish school, which was where they were learning Hebrew and stuff. I never did that. I was certainly very aware that I was Jewish, but it was cultural rather than religious. My parents said to me, well, do you want to go to Jewish school? I said, is that like another school you go to after regular school's finished? They said, yeah. I said, no, I don't want to do that. Why would I do that? And so I didn't. So, I mean, these things were offered, but they were just offered in a very neutral way. They were not imposed. Yeah, well, The Fly, I mean, I always liked the idea of people who, I believe, who exemplify what I think is a very basic human trait, which is that we don't accept the world as it appears, as it's given to us. And so when you have a story about a scientist who goes even further with that, then I'm on board. At the time, people felt this movie, The Fly, my version of it, 1986, was an emblem of the AIDS epidemic. But to me, I felt really it was beyond that. It was really the aging epidemic. You know, it's the idea that we all ultimately disintegrate, and we are conscious of that, and we are aware of that, and we are aware of that in a way that no other consciousness in the universe is, and it's an interesting spectacle that we all have to undergo if we live long enough. And so it's accelerated in the movie, but I think it really, his disintegration to me is really about aging and death and dealing